The first sign something was wrong was Logan calling me from my personal cell. That might not sound like much, but it was nearly 5 in the evening, and he knew I was still on shift. He also knew not to bother me unless it was serious. When I answered, his voice was shaky, barely holding it together. "Dad, I'm locked in the garage," he whispered. "Cam did it. He said you're not my dad anymore." My heart stopped. "What?" "Logan, where's your mom?" I asked, already grabbing my coat. "She left like an hour ago. Cam was drinking and yelling, and he pushed me and shoved me in here. I'm coming. Stay on the line." That was it. I was gone before I even remembered to clock out. I tore through the design floor, ignoring my boss calling my name, ignoring the CAD plans still open on my monitor. I didn't care. I couldn't breathe right until I was in my car, punching the gas like it owed me something. My name is Marcus. I'm 43, a mechanical engineer in Cincinnati, and until that moment, I thought I was still married, or at least clinging to the wreckage of a marriage. But in that single call, everything unraveled. Camera. Danielle had introduced him 6 months ago, said he was a life coach. I didn't like the guy from the jump. He was one of those 40-something Instagram philosopher types. All muscles, no job, and way too comfortable walking around my house barefoot. He talked in vague platitudes like, "You have to let the old version of yourself die," which I guess was his excuse for freeloading while I worked 10-hour days. But Danielle swore it wasn't like that. "He's helping me heal," she said once. I thought it was just a phase, yoga mats and weird supplements, midlife crisis stuff. But now I was racing home because this guy had locked my 12-year-old son in the damn garage. My tires screeched turning off the interstate. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my fingers went numb. And while I drove, my brain fired off every warning sign I had ignored. The sudden gym memberships Danielle never used, the cryptic phone calls on the back patio, the way she'd started talking to Logan like he was her little brother, not her son. Detached, floaty. "Cam says you're too rigid," she told me once during a fight. "You choke the life out of everything." Rigid? I was paying the mortgage and keeping our lives running while she played Guru's apprentice to a guy who lived off smoothies and borrowed charisma. Rage started to take over, not the kind that explodes, the cold kind. The kind that tunnels your vision and makes your pulse hum in your ears. My boy, my son, locked up like an animal. The neighborhood entrance flew by. I didn't even wait for the garage to open. I parked halfway on the lawn and ran. The front door was cracked. The garage light was on. I had no idea what I was walking into. But I knew this. I wasn't leaving without Logan. And if Cam laid one more finger on him, someone was going to the hospital. That was the last thought I had before I stepped inside the war zone that used to be my home. The garage door was wide open, but the interior light cast a sickly yellow over the chaos. There was a broken chair near the entry, a plastic bin cracked in half, and one of Logan's old Nerf guns crushed under someone's boot. My heart pounded louder than my steps. "Logan," I called. "Dad!" His voice shot back instantly from the dark corner of the garage. I rushed in, saw him crouch behind a shelf, wrapped in a thin hoodie. His cheeks were red from the cold, eyes wide, trembling with relief. "It's okay, buddy," I said, already pulling him into a hug. "I've got you." He clung to me like he hadn't let himself cry until that moment, just sobbed into my chest. I held on to him until his breathing slowed, then I stood. "Where's Cam?" "He went inside. He was on the phone with someone. I think he was drunk." I nodded and kissed Logan's forehead. "Go wait by the car. Don't come inside, no matter what you hear." He hesitated, eyes flicking toward the house. "Now, Logan." He bolted. I turned and stepped through the door into the house, my house, and into something out of a nightmare. Cam was shirtless, barefoot, and holding a half-empty bottle of something expensive I didn't buy. He had music blaring from the living room speakers, some synth crap with a fake tribal beat, and was pacing in the kitchen, talking on speakerphone. "Bro, I'm telling you it's done," he was saying, his voice slurred and swaggering. "I got this place locked down. She's with me now. Her kid? He'll get over it. Marcus was never really his dad anyway." I didn't say a word. I just walked up behind him and grabbed the back of his neck like I was picking up trash. He shouted as I slammed him into the counter. "The hell are you doing, man?" he yelled, shoving me off. But I didn't back down. I lunged and punched him in the ribs. He staggered back, still clutching the phone. You locked my son in the garage, I growled. You call that taking over? He swung at me, missed by a mile, and that was all the excuse I needed. I tackled him onto the kitchen floor, fists landing hard. Years of pent-up frustration. Every insult, every condescending smirk, every moment I'd held my tongue while this clown waltzed around my house, came pouring out through my fists. He tried to cover up, whimpering now. You're crazy, man. Get up, I snapped, standing over him. Let's see how real you are now. Just then, the front door creaked open. I turned. Danielle walked in like she'd just stepped out of a wellness retreat brochure. Flowy cardigan, sandals, hair braided back. Not a care in the world, not a trace of urgency. Like she'd left for a latte and didn't expect the apocalypse to break out in her absence. What is this? She asked, looking between us like we were annoying toddlers. You left our son here alone, I said, my voice shaking from adrenaline. With him, he locked Logan in the garage. Danielle didn't flinch. She walked over to Cam and knelt beside him, touching his shoulder gently. Are you okay, babe? She cooed, completely ignoring me. Cam groaned. He jumped me, Danny. I was just talking on the phone and he snapped. Danielle looked up at me with the kind of expression I used to think was sadness. Now I saw it for what it was. Contempt. Her mouth curved, cruel and slow. This is why I told you to move out, she said. You bring this energy wherever you go. Logan is scared all the time, not because of Cam, but because of you. I was speechless. Me? He called me in tears. You weren't even here. She stood, folding her arms like a judge passing sentence. You're just mad because I finally chose someone who sees me, someone who helps me grow. Grow into what? Someone who lets their boyfriend lock a child in a freezing garage? Danielle's voice turned cold. He needed boundaries. You never set them. That's why he's weak. I stared at her, trying to reconcile the woman I married with the one standing in front of me now. There was nothing left of her I recognized. You're sick, I said quietly. Both of you? Cam laughed, coughing. You think yelling and punching makes you a man? That's why she's done with you, Marcus. You're just a washed-up blueprint pusher. I'm what she needs. Danielle nodded like she was agreeing with some universal truth. I wanted to lunge again, but I stopped myself, because I saw Logan's face in my mind, waiting outside in the cold, scared and small and brave. This wasn't about proving anything anymore. This was about protecting my son. I backed away, eyes never leaving them. You made your choice, I said, but I'm not leaving Logan in this house again, not for a second. Danielle rolled her eyes. You don't get to decide that. We'll see, I said, and as I walked out the door, I already knew I wasn't coming back as a husband. I was coming back as a father, and that meant war. By the time I got Logan back in the car, I'd shoved down enough of the rage to speak calmly again. He was huddled in the passenger seat with his hoodie pulled over his head, quiet and pale. I started the engine and turned the heat up full blast. You okay? I asked. He didn't answer right away. Then, with a shaky voice, he said, He called me a stray. My grip on the wheel tightened. What do you mean? He said I'm just a stray dog you picked up and pretended was yours. He said Mom's finally making things right. I didn't trust myself to speak for a minute. He's wrong, I finally said. You're my son. You hear me? No matter what anybody says. Logan nodded, wiping his eyes. But I knew this wasn't something a single car ride could fix. Then, just as I turned onto our street, red and blue lights flashed in the rearview mirror. 2 cruisers were parked outside the house. An officer stood on the lawn, speaking into his radio. Another was already walking toward our driveway. You called them, right? I asked. Logan nodded slowly. When I was locked in there. Good. I parked, stepped out, and motioned for Logan to stay inside the car. Before I could reach the front yard, a female officer approached me. Sir, are you Marcus Daniels? I am. Can you step over here with me, please? Behind her, Danielle stood on the porch with her arms crossed, looking every bit the concerned homeowner. Cam had a towel wrapped around his shoulder like he'd just taken a bullet in a war zone. I'm going to let you explain what happened, the officer said, notebook in hand. So I did. Everything. Logan's call, the garage, Cam's behavior, the confrontation. I kept it as clear as I could, even though my blood pressure was spiking all over again just thinking about it. Then Danielle stepped down, voice soft, almost sweet. Officer, I think Marcus is just overwhelmed. He hasn't lived here for weeks. He came in unannounced and attacked Cam. My son gets emotional sometimes, but he wasn't locked in the garage. He just got scared and exaggerated. My jaw dropped. Are you serious right now? She ignored me, eyes on the officer. Marcus has always had a temper. I've tried to be patient with him, but it's been hard. I let him see Logan whenever he wants. But tonight, he just snapped. Cam chimed in, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. Guy came in swinging, you can ask anyone. I almost laughed. Ask Logan, the officer nodded. We planned to. They called Logan out of the car. He walked up slowly, hands in his hoodie pockets, his shoulders still hunched. The officer knelt a little, like she was trying to be gentle. Hey, Logan, can you tell me what happened tonight? He looked up at her, then over at his mom, then back again. I could see the fear in his eyes, that hesitation. Not about telling the truth, but about what it would cost him. But he didn't flinch. I called my dad because Cam shoved me into the garage and locked the door, he said. He told me my dad wasn't my real dad. He said I wasn't allowed in the house anymore. Danielle's smile twitched, just a flicker, before she plastered it back on. The officer jotted something down. Were you hurt, Logan? He shook his head. Number. But it was cold and dark, and I was scared. Danielle stepped forward. He's being dramatic. He always does this when he doesn't get his way. The officer held up a hand. Ma'am, let him finish. Logan took a breath. My dad didn't break in. The garage door was already open, and Cam was yelling on the phone about how he took over the house. I heard him. That was it. The silence that followed was long, heavy. The second officer stepped away and started talking into his radio again. Cam muttered something under his breath. Lying little brat. But not quiet enough. Excuse me, I said, stepping toward him. Sir, the officer warned, let's keep this civil. No, I said. Let's call it what it is. Danielle threw her hands up. This is ridiculous. Are you going to arrest me for letting my boyfriend discipline a mouthy kid? The first officer straightened her stance. No one's under arrest, yet. But you'll both need to provide statements. And Logan is going to be interviewed by Child Services. Danielle's jaw clenched, hard enough I thought it might crack. So you're just going to take his side? That's what this is? No, I said, stepping forward. This is the part where you realize you don't get to control the story anymore. Danielle scoffed. You're just doing this because I moved on. No, I said, quieter now. I'm doing this because you left our son locked in a garage with your drunk boyfriend. They didn't take Cam. They didn't put Danielle in cuffs. But I saw it on their faces. The officers weren't buying her version. Not completely. And that was enough. An hour later, Logan and I were sitting on a busted futon in my brother Leon's apartment. Leon didn't say much, just handed me a beer and offered Logan a Pop-Tart, which the kid accepted like it was a full-course meal. You staying for a while? Leon asked. Yeah, I said. If that's okay? Of course. I looked at Logan, curled up at the far end of the couch, finally starting to breathe easy again. And I knew, deep in my bones, this wasn't about Danielle anymore. It wasn't about revenge or getting back what I lost. It was about protecting what I still had, my son, my name, my truth, and I wasn't giving those up without a fight. The next morning, Leon was already up, frying eggs in his tiny kitchen, while Logan flipped through channels like nothing had happened the night before. I sat at the wobbly dining table, sipping coffee that tasted like burnt hope and cheap filters. The adrenaline had worn off, and now all I felt was heavy, like I'd been dropped off the edge of a cliff and hit every rock on the way down. Leon slid a plate in front of me. Thought you might want some fuel. Heard from Danielle yet? Nope. Don't need to, I said. I already know what she's doing. Logan looked up. She's gonna be mad, huh? She's already mad, I said, because the story didn't go her way. That's when Leon cleared his throat. You might want to sit down for this. I'm already sitting. I mean, emotionally, man. He pulled out his phone, opened a photo, and turned it to me. My stomach twisted. It was our front yard. Or, I guess, Danielle's front yard now. My clothes were in a trash bag, ripped open and scattered. My office chair was flipped on its side on the lawn. A box of photos. Our wedding, Logan's first birthday, my parents' anniversary party, soaking wet, bent from rain, or a hose. Logan's baby blanket lay half draped over the curb, like someone had tried to throw it and missed. "You've got to be kidding me," I muttered. She had Cam out there with a Bluetooth speaker blasting music while he was tossing your stuff like it was a yard sale, Leon said. Neighbors saw it. One even offered to help clean it up until Danielle told her to mind her business. I stood up without touching the food. "I'm going over there." Logan didn't say anything. He just looked down at the remote, holding it so tightly his knuckles turned white. "Stay here," I told him. "I'll be back soon." Leon followed me to the door. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know," I said. "But I'm not letting her erase me like this." By the time I pulled up, most of the mess was gone. Either she tossed it in the trash or some poor neighbor got guilted into helping. My grill was gone, my bookshelf was missing. A cracked picture frame lay face down in the flower bed. I didn't knock. I walked straight up and opened the door. It wasn't locked. Cam was sitting on the couch, legs stretched out, sipping orange juice like he'd just come back from a jog. "Hey," he drawled. "Look who finally showed up. You here to take the rest of your trash or just vibe in the hallway?" I walked past him without answering. He didn't stop me. The living room looked different, colder. All the pictures of me and Logan were gone. In their place, a framed quote on the wall. "Let go of who you were to become who you are." Gag. I went straight to the hall closet, pushed aside some shoes and coats, reached into the back, and pulled up the false panel I had installed myself years ago. Inside was a thin folder wrapped in an old t-shirt. I opened it, checked the contents, birth certificates, financial documents, a flash drive with scanned copies of everything. Untouched, thank God. When I turned around, Danielle was standing in the hallway. Fresh blowout, yoga pants, holding a bottle of pressed juice like she was doing a shoot for some fake wellness blog. "That's stealing," she said. I stared at her. "It's my name on every one of those documents. You don't live here anymore, and yet I'm still Logan's father, which means I get to have proof that I exist in his life." Cam stood up from the couch, stretching. "Maybe you should get going, man. You're kind of ruining the flow in here." I ignored him and walked toward the front door. "That's all you came for?" Danielle asked. "No big speech? No begging to come back?" I stopped just inside the threshold. "You already threw me out," I said, turning slowly. "But you didn't just throw out my shirts and old shoes. You threw out Logan's baby blanket, his photos, his memories. You didn't erase me, Danielle. You erased us." She rolled her eyes. "He's a kid." "He'll forget. Cam's going to teach him how to be a man." I laughed, not a loud one, just a broken, hollow sound. "You think this guy's a role model?" I pointed at Cam. "He's unemployed. He drinks before noon, and he locks kids in garages. That's your definition of a man?" Cam stepped forward like he wanted to puff up. "You done playing daddy martyr yet?" "I was done the moment you laid a hand on my son." Danielle tilted her head. "You're jealous. That's all this is." "No," I said. "This is clarity." And with that, I walked out. Not because I wanted to, but because the man I needed to be, the father Logan needed me to be, had more important things to do than argue with two people who mistook destruction for growth. I didn't slam the door behind me, but I didn't look back either. Back at Leon's place, the mood was quieter. Logan had curled up on the futon with his hoodie still on, watching reruns of some old cartoon like it was medicine. Leon was working his way through a microwave burrito, glancing at me every now and then like he wanted to ask 100 questions but knew better than to start. I sat down at the kitchen table, the folder from the house in front of me. My hands hovered over it for a second. I knew there was something inside that mattered, something I had hidden years ago in case of an emergency. I just didn't expect that emergency to be my own life collapsing in slow motion. I opened it. The first few pages were what I remembered. Copies of Logan's birth certificate, our joint tax returns, his vaccination records. Stuff I'd needed to keep safe when Danielle's filing system was just a shoebox full of unopened envelopes. But then, further back, I found something new, something I hadn't put there. A stack of receipts, travel bookings, gift charges, a hotel room in Sedona, a cabin in Asheville, 2 plane tickets from 3 months ago, one for Danielle Daniels, the other for C. Maddox, Cam's last name. I swallowed hard, kept flipping. There were photos too, printed, not digital, cheap ink on glossy paper, like someone had made them at a drugstore kiosk. Danielle and Cam holding hands on a hiking trail, laughing by a fire pit, toasting green smoothies in a hotel lobby, and then, at the bottom, a folded letter, handwritten. In Danielle's looping script, I hesitated, but I unfolded it. Marcus will never leave unless we give him a reason to. He's too loyal, or too afraid of losing Logan. But if we push hard enough, he'll go quietly. Once he's out of the picture, we can rebuild this house from scratch with new energy and a better future. Logan will resist at first, but I think we can redirect him with structure and real masculine leadership. Cam believes boarding school might be the best long-term solution, somewhere firm but therapeutic. He needs to forget Marcus's fear-based parenting. We all do. I didn't move. I just sat there with the letter open, reading the lines again and again. This wasn't a phase. This wasn't a fling. This wasn't some sad post-divorce spiral. It was a plan. A cold, strategic plan to erase me from my son's life and reshape my kid like he was a lump of clay. I rubbed my temples, heart pounding. She was going to send him away. To military school? Logan's voice came from behind me. I turned. He was standing there, barefoot, arms crossed, but his face looked older suddenly, more aware. How much did you hear? Enough, he said. I know she doesn't like how I act around you. She says I get clingy, like I'm supposed to not care. I knelt down next to him. Logan, I don't care what she says. You're not a problem to be solved. You're not broken. And you're not going anywhere. He looked at the letter in my hand. So, what are you going to do? I stood up slowly. I'm going to make some phone calls. That night, after Logan went to sleep on the pull-out mattress, I emailed everything. The photos, the receipts, the letter, to myself, and saved it all to 3 different backups. Then I called a woman I hadn't spoken to in years, Renee Kravitz, family law attorney, friend of a friend, known for making sharks look like goldfish. She picked up on the second ring. Marcus Daniels, she said. Didn't think I'd hear from you again. You finally ready to stop playing nice? I've got a situation, I said. My ex is trying to erase me, and now I've got proof. There was a pause. Good, she said. Let's remind her what happens when people pick a fight with an engineer who actually thinks things through. We made an appointment for the morning. I hung up, took a breath, and looked around Leon's place. It smelled like laundry and burnt pizza rolls, and the futon had a permanent lean on one side. But it was safe, and right now, that was everything. I stood by the window for a while, watching the rain start to fall. Outside, the world looked washed out, tired. But inside me, something had changed. Not grief, not even anger, really. Resolve. I used to think being a good father meant compromise, holding my tongue, avoiding conflict for the sake of peace. But peace built on fear is just another word for surrender. Danielle thought she'd broken me, but all she did was wake me up. Tomorrow, I'd walk into the courthouse and start a war if I had to. Because now, I had proof. And more importantly, I had Logan. And I wasn't letting either of us go without a fight. I stood outside the courthouse, coffee in one hand, folder in the other. Renee met me on the front steps, hair pulled back, blazer sharp enough to cut glass. You ready? She asked. I nodded. More than ready. Good, she said, leading the way. Because they came to play today. Cam's in there, looking like a department store mannequin. And Danielle, she brought the full show. Pearls, soft tears, and a voice like she's auditioning for a sad mom commercial. I forced a breath through my nose. She's good at theater, always has been. The emergency custody hearing wasn't a full trial, but it felt like one. Inside the courtroom, the gallery was nearly empty. Just a few folks waiting for their own cases, a bailiff, a sleepy clerk, and us. But to me, it felt packed with ghosts. Memories of birthday parties, report cards, movie nights with Logan under a blanket, all of them on the line. Danielle sat at the petitioner's table with her lawyer, a guy who looked like he spent most of his days golfing with judges. Cam lounged 2 rows back, chewing gum like he was waiting for a dentist appointment. Renee and I took our seats. She leaned over. Remember, don't react, no matter what she says. I got it, I whispered, but my hand was already clenched around the folder in my lap. The judge entered, an older woman with a blunt haircut and an expression like she'd seen it all and didn't have time for nonsense. She read through the docket, then looked up. Let's begin. Ms. Daniels, your counsel may speak. Danielle's lawyer stood and launched into a carefully rehearsed speech about emotional instability, hostile behavior, and a sudden violent intrusion into a peaceful home. He painted Danielle as a calm, nurturing mother, trying to protect her son from a man who refuses to accept the natural end of a marriage. When he sat down, Danielle wiped a tear that wasn't there. The judge turned to Renee. Ms. Kravitz! Renee stood, smooth and steady. Your Honor, my client is not only Logan's legal father, he has been his sole source of stability, emotional care, and safety since the day he was born. What happened was not a disruption. It was a rescue. She paused, then glanced toward the back of the courtroom. I'd like to call Logan Daniels to the stand. Danielle's lawyer objected. Your Honor, he's 12 years old. This could be distressing. The judge cut him off. If he's mature enough to be locked in a garage and allegedly forgotten by the adults in his life, I'd say he's mature enough to speak. They brought Logan in through the side door. He looked so small walking to the stand, his blazer too big at the shoulders, hair combed to one side, but his chin was up. He was sworn in. Then Renee approached. Logan, can you tell us, in your own words, what happened the night of March 5th? He looked at Danielle. She gave him the softest, most poisonous smile I've ever seen. But Logan turned away. Cam told me I wasn't allowed in the house anymore, he said. He said my dad wasn't really my dad, and that I was just getting in the way. Did he put you somewhere? Logan nodded. In the garage. He locked the door. I called my dad from my phone. Renee's voice was calm. How did you feel, Logan? He blinked fast, but didn't cry. Scared, cold, and mad. Not at my dad. At Mom? Why? Logan's voice cracked. Because she let it happen. That was it. You could feel the air shift. Danielle looked like someone had slapped her. Cam sat up, arms crossed tight. Renee walked over to the judge's bench and held up the folder. We also have additional evidence, Your Honor. Travel records, a letter written by Ms. Daniels detailing a plan to phase my client out of his son's life. It includes specific references to using emotional manipulation and removing Marcus Daniels as a legal parent. She handed it to the clerk. Danielle's lawyer jumped up. Objection! Overruled, the judge said. I'll allow it. The judge read the letter slowly, page by page. You could hear the ceiling fan ticking overhead, the faint squeak of Cam shifting in his chair. When the judge finally looked up, her face was unreadable. Ms. Daniels, she said, do you dispute the authenticity of this letter? Danielle shifted. I wrote it, but it wasn't meant to be taken literally. It was therapeutic, part of an exercise Cam and I were doing. Uh-huh, the judge said, like she'd heard worse excuses from actual criminals. And Mr. Maddox, she added, looking at Cam. He straightened in his seat, trying to fix his posture. I was just trying to help. No, the judge cut him off. You're not helping anyone. She turned back to me. Mr. Daniels, based on the evidence and the child's testimony, I am granting you temporary full custody of Logan Daniels, effective immediately, Ms. Daniels will be allowed supervised visitation, pending review by a court-appointed counselor. Danielle gasped. You're taking him from me? No, the judge said sharply. You gave him away the moment you locked the door. With that, she stood. This hearing is adjourned. The gavel hit the block, and just like that, I could breathe again. Outside, Logan walked next to me in silence. The wind was sharp, but he didn't seem to feel it. When we reached the steps, Danielle was waiting. She stormed over, wild-eyed, voice low. This isn't over. You think you won? You just ruined your son's future. Before I could respond, Logan stepped in front of me. You did that, he said. Not him. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Cam tried to say something too, but Danielle turned on him with a snarl. Don't talk to me. You said it would be easy. You said he wouldn't fight back. And just like that, the cracks were visible. She walked away in heels that clicked louder than her words. Cam followed, muttering curses under his breath. I stood there watching them go, Logan's hand in mine. For the first time in months, maybe years, I didn't feel powerless. I felt like a father again, and this time, I wasn't going anywhere. It was 3 days after the hearing, and Logan and I had started to build a new rhythm at Leon's apartment. Microwave dinners, shared chores, early mornings with scrambled eggs and rush socks. Nothing fancy, but ours. We were sitting on the floor that night, eating tacos off paper plates, when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Can you meet me tonight? Alone. I have something you need to see. Rachel, Danielle's older sister. I hadn't spoken to her in over a year. She used to babysit Logan when he was a toddler, back when Danielle still cared about things like school sign-ups and bedtime stories. But she faded out when Cam came in. I figured she just didn't want to get involved, until now. I texted back, "Where?" She sent an address, an old parking lot behind a closed diner on the west side. Leon raised an eyebrow as I grabbed my jacket. "This another lawyer meeting?" "No," I said. "This one's personal." The lot was dim and empty, lit only by a single buzzing street lamp and the soft glow of my headlights. Rachel stood near the back, arms crossed, hood up, looking like she didn't want to be recognized, even by herself. She looked up as I approached. Her face was thinner than I remembered, makeup smudged like she'd been crying recently. "Hey, Marcus," she said. "Rachel?" She held up a small object between two fingers. "Here." It was a flash drive. I stared at it. "What's this?" She exhaled. "Everything." I took it, not speaking yet. She rubbed her arms. I didn't know it was going to get this bad. At first I thought Danielle was just blowing off steam. You guys had hit a rough patch, and she needed someone to vent to. But then Cam came in, and things changed. I nodded slowly, letting her talk. They'd have these conversations when they thought no one else was around. In the kitchen, the car. I started recording them, just audio, sometimes screen captures. I was scared, but I thought if I had something, maybe I could stop it. Maybe if you saw what they were saying about Logan, you'd finally step in. I frowned. "You knew?" She winced. "I knew some of it. The garage thing. That was the last straw. I saw it on the news alert. Just a small local mention about a domestic call. And I realized she wasn't going to stop, not unless someone forced her to. I looked at the flash drive in my hand. "What's on it?" She looked away. Plans, conversations. One video where Cam jokes about sending Logan to a real discipline school in Utah. Danielle laughs and says, "As long as it erases Marcus from his head." My stomach twisted. "There's also some financial stuff," she added. "Emails. Danielle's been helping Cam move money, your money, out of shared accounts. She's been building a case to make you look unstable, probably for the custody battle she thought she was going to win." I clenched my jaw. "Why now? Why are you giving this to me?" Rachel took a deep breath. "Because Logan doesn't deserve this. And because I believed her lies at first. I thought you were the problem, controlling, cold. That's how she described you." She looked up, eyes wet. "But now I see who she really is, and who you are." I nodded once. "Thank you." Rachel stepped back. "They don't know I have this, not yet. If they find out..." "They won't," I said. "This stays between us." She hesitated, then whispered, "Tell Logan I'm sorry. For not being there sooner." I slipped the flash drive into my jacket pocket. "I will." She nodded, turned, and disappeared into the dark. Back at Leon's, Logan was asleep on the couch, one arm dangling off the side, a plate of cold nachos on the floor. I sat down at the kitchen table, plugged the flash drive into my laptop, and pressed play. Danielle's voice came first. "He's stuck in the past, Cam. He thinks being a dad means showing up with lunch money and measuring door frames. It's all routine with him. No soul. Then Cam, he's weak. Logan needs to unlearn everything Marcus taught him. We give it 2 years, maybe 3, boarding school, therapy, manhood programs. He'll forget who raised him." And finally, Danielle again laughing. "Marcus will be a footnote. He already is." I sat there for a long time, letting the audio play, piece after piece, schemes, manipulations, heartless jokes. But what hit me the hardest was how easy it all sounded for them. Like erasing me was just an item on their to-do list. I closed the laptop, stared at the ceiling. They thought they could rewrite the story, but now I had the truth, and that changed everything, because I wasn't just fighting back anymore. I was about to burn their whole version of reality to the ground. The courthouse looked different this time, not physically, just in the way I carried myself walking in. Last time, I was anxious, reactive, barely keeping it together. Today, I was calm, Not because I wasn't angry, I was. But this time, I had something Danielle never expected me to have: leverage. Renee met me at the security line, her bag already slung over her shoulder, eyes alert like she'd been awake since dawn. "You bring it?" she asked. I patted my jacket pocket. "Every file, every recording, it's all there." She smiled. "Then let's go ruin someone's day." Inside, the courtroom was already filling up. Danielle sat at her usual seat, dressed in a pale blue blouse like she was headed to a Sunday book club. Cam was in the back again, slouched with the same smug look. Except today he looked a little tighter around the eyes, a little twitchier. Maybe he sensed something was coming. Danielle glanced over her shoulder and saw me. Her smile faltered. She knew. The judge entered, same one as before, and the session began. Danielle's lawyer led with a performance that could have earned him a daytime Emmy. "My client has made every effort to comply with the court's requirements. She's taken parenting courses, completed her psychological evaluation with favorable remarks, and has demonstrated a consistent effort to rebuild trust with her son. We believe she is ready to resume shared custody." The judge nodded. "And the minor, Logan? He's been doing well," the lawyer continued, "but we believe he deserves access to both parents, a balanced upbringing." Renee stood up, calm, clear. "Your Honor, with respect, we disagree, and we have new evidence to support why." The judge's brow lifted slightly. "Go on." Renee walked to the center of the room. "We have in our possession audio recordings and digital evidence provided by a direct relative of Ms. Daniels, which show that she and her partner, Mr. Maddox, were engaged in a deliberate and sustained effort to alienate Logan from his father, and eventually remove Mr. Daniels from his life entirely." Danielle's lawyer stood. "Objection." Renee held up a flash drive. "I have 10 separate files, voice recordings, emails, financial transfers, some in Miss Daniels' own handwriting. The contents include explicit references to boarding school arrangements for Logan without Mr. Daniels' knowledge and statements about manipulating custody proceedings to force a removal of paternal rights." The judge motioned for the clerk to take the flash drive. "Proceed." We all waited. Danielle didn't speak. She didn't blink. But I watched her hands, fingers twisting the hem of her blouse, knuckles white. Cam leaned forward in his seat, whispering something, but Danielle didn't respond. The judge listened to the first clip over headphones. A minute passed, then 2. Then she looked up. "Ms. Daniels," she said, "would you like to explain the context of these recordings?" Danielle stood slowly. "Your Honor, those were private conversations taken out of context. They were exaggerated. We were venting." "Venting?" the judge repeated. "Because I heard you laughing while discussing sending your son to a correctional facility to reset him. That's not venting. That's planning." Danielle's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Renee moved in for the kill. "We also have emails detailing unauthorized financial activity from shared accounts, suggesting premeditated fraud. In short, Your Honor, Ms. Daniels was not simply preparing for single parenthood. She was orchestrating a life without Marcus Daniels in any form." The judge turned to Logan's appointed advocate, seated near the front. The woman stood. "I spoke to Logan this morning. He says, and I quote, 'I don't want to go back there. She picks Cam every time. He scares me. He is adamant that his father is the only safe parent in his life.' That was it. The final nail." The judge sighed, folded her hands. "This court finds sufficient grounds to grant Mr. Marcus Daniels permanent full custody of Logan Daniels. Visitation rights for Ms. Daniels will remain supervised, pending further psychological evaluation and child welfare review." Danielle stood. "Wait, no," the judge snapped. "You don't get to plead innocence after trying to erase a father from his son's life. Not on my watch." The gavel hit the block. Next case. Outside, Logan was waiting on the courthouse steps with Leon. He looked up when he saw me. I didn't have to say anything. He just knew. He dropped his backpack and ran over, throwing his arms around me. "You did it," he said. "No," I said softly. "We did." Danielle stormed out a moment later, heels clicking across the pavement, Cam trailing behind her like a kicked dog. She marched straight up to me. "You think this makes you the good guy?" she hissed. "You humiliated me." I looked at her calmly. "You did that all on your own." She stepped closer, face tightening. "You ruined everything." But Logan stepped between us. His voice was steady, clear. "You don't scare me anymore." Danielle froze, like someone had flipped the power off inside her. Cam muttered something under his breath, but no one paid attention to him anymore, not even her. She turned, jaw clenched, and walked away without another word. As Logan and I walked to the car, I looked up at the sky. No sun, just overcast gray. But still, it felt lighter somehow. Not because we'd won, but because, for the first time in a long, long time, we were free. A week after the final court hearing, we moved into the new place. It wasn't much. The house was small, tucked near the edge of a quiet cul-de-sac, about 20 minutes from Leon's. Built in the 60s, with popcorn ceilings and peeling baseboards. The water heater made a loud gurgling sound every time it kicked on, and the back door stuck unless you yanked it just right. But it had a fenced yard, a leaky tool shed, a crooked mailbox with faded numbers. And for the first time in months, it felt like hours. Logan walked through the house slowly the first morning, dragging his fingertips along the walls like he was trying to memorize it. He paused in the hallway, staring at the empty walls. "You think we could paint my room black?" he asked. "Black?" I raised an eyebrow. "You trying to make it look like a vampire cave?" He grinned. "Maybe." I shrugged. "Sure, why not?" He lit up like I'd handed him keys to the city. We started painting that Saturday. It took 2 coats and still didn't look right, but we didn't care. By the end of it, we had paint on our hands, in our hair, and a long black streak running across the ceiling because Logan lost control of the roller. He laughed so hard he dropped it. I didn't fix the streak. The rest of the house came together in pieces. A coffee table from Leon's garage, a mattress from an old friend, a thrift store bookshelf that leaned too far to the left, but still held Logan's comic books. We hung up a few of our old family photos, just the ones with the 2 of us. I found one of Logan when he was 5, standing on my workbench with goggles too big for his face and a screwdriver in his hand. He stared at it for a long time, before quietly asking, "Can we put that in the living room?" "Front and center," I said. We made new routines: eggs in the morning, homework at the kitchen table, Saturday movie nights with popcorn and the same worn-out blanket Logan had clung to since he was a toddler. He asked me once if I missed the old house. I thought about it. The memories were good. The way it used to be. Before Cam, before the whispering phone calls, before the silence that replaced Danielle's affection. But I shook my head. Number? Not really. He didn't either. One night, Logan came into the living room holding an envelope. He looked nervous. "It's from Mom," he said. "It came in the mail today." I took it from him, turning it over slowly. Handwritten. No return address, no stamps. Must have been dropped off by hand. "Do you want me to read it first?" I asked. He shook his head. "Number I already did." I waited. "She says she's getting help," he mumbled. "That Cam's gone and she wants to fix things, that she hopes I'll forgive her someday." I didn't say anything. Logan looked at me. "Do you think people like her change?" I sat down and patted the cushion next to me. He dropped onto the couch. "No," I said quietly. "I think they just change the mask, not the person underneath." He stared at the letter in his hand, then nodded once. "Okay." He stood up, walked to the fireplace, and held the envelope over the edge. "You sure?" I asked. "Yeah," he said. "I don't need it." He let it drop. The paper curled and blackened in the flame, dissolving into ash within seconds. We watched it burn. That night, we sat on the porch together, a cool breeze cutting through the warm air. Logan had a soda in one hand and a sketchbook in the other. I was nursing the same coffee for the 3rd hour. "Do you ever think about the old you?" he asked suddenly. "The guy who stayed quiet, let people walk over him?" He nodded. "Sometimes," I said, "but not with regret. More like a warning." Logan flipped a page in his sketchbook. "I like this version better." "Me too," I said. We sat in silence for a while after that. Not because there was nothing to say, but because we didn't need to say anything. We were finally living in a place that wasn't about survival or pretending or bracing for the next emotional blow. It was honest, imperfect, real, and for the first time in years, that was enough. It was a Friday evening, late summer, the kind of night that smells like cut grass and charcoal. I was out back grilling hot dogs on a rusty old Weber Leon had given me. Logan was sitting on the porch steps, barefoot, messing with a broken sprinkler head like it was a science project. We'd both had long weeks. I was back at the engineering firm part-time, easing into work again without the pressure of overtime. Logan had just finished his first week of 8th grade. "How was school today?" I asked, flipping the last hot dog. He shrugged. "Okay." "Just okay?" He grinned. "We dissected a frog." I turned, raising an eyebrow. "You eat lunch after that?" "Nope," he said proudly. Almost threw up in front of Madison Bailey. I laughed. "Proud of you, man." He stood and stretched. "We're supposed to do a science fair project this year. I might build a motor or something. You know I'll help." "I know," he said, "but I kinda want to try it on my own first." That caught me a little off guard, but it made me smile. A few minutes later, we were sitting on the porch eating dinner off paper plates. Logan devoured 2 hot dogs like he hadn't seen food in days. We talked about nothing important, how his science teacher wore shoes 2 sizes too big, how our neighbor's dog had figured out how to open their back gate, how the new Star Wars series was a total letdown. Normal stuff, no drama, no tension, no stomach-knotting silence, just peace. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows over the yard, Logan looked up at the porch light above us. "We should get a dog," he said. I glanced at him. "A dog, huh?" "Yeah, like a real one. Big ears. Sleeps on the couch, barks at the mailman. You offering to walk him every morning?" He thought about it. 50-50. 70-30, I countered. "Deal," he said instantly. We sat in silence again after that, watching as moths started dancing around the porch light. It flickered every so often, like it couldn't quite decide if it wanted to stay on or give out. Logan leaned his head against my shoulder for a second. Not long, just enough to make me freeze in place. "You ever think about what would have happened if you didn't come get me that night?" he asked softly. "I don't," I said. "Because I did." He nodded. "Yeah, I'm glad you did." I didn't have words for that, so I just put my arm around him and held it there. Later that night, after Logan went to bed, I sat alone on the porch. The grill was cooling, the air was quiet, and the porch light kept flickering. I thought back to the beginning, Danielle's smile when we first moved into the old house, Logan's first soccer game, the look on his face the day he learned to ride a bike without training wheels. And then I thought about everything that came after, the betrayal, the lies, the silence. And I realized something I hadn't let myself believe until that moment. This wasn't a happy ending. This was a real beginning, because we were no longer surviving someone else's chaos. We were choosing peace, building something new. It didn't matter that the house was crooked or that the paint peeled off the back fence. It didn't matter that our porch light was probably going to die any day now, because inside that house, in our home, we had something that couldn't be bought or broken, a bond, a truth. And even in the quiet, even in the dark, that was enough. That would always be enough.